The first crack in my life didn't sound like a fight, or a slammed door, or even the breaking of glass. It was quieter. It was Elena turning her phone face down at dinner. She had never done that before. Not once in the 3 years we'd been together. We were the kind of couple who left our phones charging on the counter, screen buzzing, notifications pinging, either of us caring. Trust was oxygen. It was everywhere, invisible, assumed. Until suddenly it wasn't. I'm Cole. 29 years old. Paramedic. My job trains me to notice the small details. The blue lips that hint at oxygen loss, the uneven pupils that scream head trauma, the subtle things people miss until it's too late. And when Elena, my fiancée, started guarding her phone like it was a classified document, my instincts caught it instantly. The problem? Instincts don't come with proof. Elena was 27, an elementary school teacher who could turn construction paper and glue into magic. She was sharp, funny in a quiet way, and when she smiled, she lit up rooms I didn't even know were dark. I had imagined growing old with her, laughing about wrinkles and lost keys. Instead, I was sitting across from her at a small Italian restaurant, watching her tuck her phone into her purse with the same quickness people use to hide weapons. "Long day?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She smiled, but her eyes flicked toward the purse like a reflex. "You know how it is. Grading, lesson plans, kids hyped up on sugar." Her tone was breezy, but my gut twisted. She was lying. And not about candy. What I didn't know then was that this was the beginning of a countdown. Not to our wedding. To the end. The night I proposed, a year earlier, I had stood on the roof of her apartment building with a ring burning a hole in my pocket. February air sharp enough to cut skin, city lights flickering below us, my heart pounding like a drumline. She said yes through tears. She jumped into my arms. And I thought, this is it. This is forever. But forever has a way of crumbling in silence, in shadows, in the little betrayals that don't leave bruises but tear at you all the same. By February of this year, the woman who once tossed me her phone with a laugh was sleeping with it under her pillow. She flinched when I walked into rooms too quickly. She snapped when I asked harmless questions. And the hardest part? She still kissed me goodnight, still held my hand in public, still wore the ring I had worked endless overtime shifts to pay for. To everyone else, we were solid. To me, we were glass with a growing crack. I kept telling myself she was stressed about the wedding. The flowers, the caterer, the venue. It was a logistical nightmare, and maybe she was just shutting down under pressure. My mom said all brides got cold feet. My best friend told me not to overthink. But I couldn't shake the weight pressing on my chest whenever her phone lit up and she angled the screen away from me. One night, as I came home from a double shift, I found her asleep on the couch. Or at least pretending to be. Her phone slipped from her hand as I walked in, screen glowing with a name I hadn't seen in years. Carter. The ex. The moody, tortured artist type who scribbled poetry in margins and smoked cigarettes in the rain. The guy she once described as magnetic but dangerous. I stood there in my uniform, the smell of antiseptic and exhaustion clinging to me, staring at the screen while my entire body went numb. The name alone felt like a gun pressed to my chest. Elena stirred, opening her eyes, fake sleeping badly. "Hey, you're home," she mumbled. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Because in that moment, something fundamental shifted. I wasn't her partner anymore. I was a placeholder. The wedding invitations were already mailed. The deposits were already paid. But the truth? The truth was sitting there on her screen, glowing like a flare in the dark. And deep down, I knew, this wasn't about flowers, or stress, or napkin colors. It was about Carter. And that was the moment the countdown hit 0. People think betrayal happens in one blow, like being stabbed in the back, sudden and clean. But it's rarely like that. Betrayal is erosion. It chips away quietly until you look down and realize the ground beneath you is gone. That's how it was with Elena. The weeks after I saw Carter's name on her phone felt like living in a house where the walls whispered. Every small change became a clue. Every excuse, Every half-smile that didn't reach her eyes, every moment her phone buzzed while she was in the shower. It all stacked up like evidence in a case I didn't want to solve. I wanted to be wrong. God, I wanted to be wrong. We were supposed to be planning a wedding, picking songs, finalizing menus, arguing about centerpieces. Instead, I was pretending not to notice when she stepped outside to take a call, or when her laughter carried through the thin walls, soft but different, like she was saving her best parts for someone else. At work, I kept it together. Paramedics don't have the luxury of distraction. Chest compressions, for lines, sirens in the night. People's lives depended on me being steady. And yet, even in the chaos of saving strangers, I'd feel her absence clawing at me. Between calls, I'd check my phone, hoping for a message from her that wasn't clipped or hollow. Hoping she'd send something ordinary. Miss you, be safe, love you. But what I got was silence. The house we shared didn't feel like ours anymore. It felt borrowed, like I was living in someone else's story. I'd walk in after midnight shifts, expecting warmth, and instead I'd find her curled away from me on the couch, face lit by a glow she snapped off the second I entered. One night, I tried to break the silence. "Elena," I said, sitting beside her. "Are you happy?" She blinked, startled, like I'd asked her something obscene. "What do you mean?" "Just with us. With me. With everything." Her jaw tightened. She adjusted the blanket around her shoulders like armor. "Cole, you're overthinking. We're planning a wedding. Why would I do that if I wasn't happy?" But her voice cracked on the word happy. And in that crack, I heard everything she wasn't saying. I tried to fight it in my own way. Bought her flowers, made dinner after 12-hour shifts, suggested weekend getaways. I thought maybe if I worked harder, if I loved louder, she'd come back to me. But love isn't a lever you can pull to fix someone's wandering heart. The more I reached, the more she drifted. Then came the night she suggested dinner at that cozy Italian place downtown, the same spot where we'd celebrated our engagement. I convinced myself it was her way of resetting us. Maybe she'd sensed the distance too. Maybe she wanted to bridge the gap. I spent the whole day clinging to that hope. I even stopped by the florist after my shift and picked up her favorite flowers, white lilies, wrapped in soft brown paper. But when I arrived at the restaurant, hope died at the table. She was already there, hands folded tightly, shoulders stiff. The air felt heavy, not romantic. She didn't kiss me hello. Didn't even smile. The waiter poured water. We ordered, though I don't remember what. My pulse was too loud in my ears. She twisted her napkin until it frayed at the edges. Finally, she looked at me with a strange, almost rehearsed calm. "Carter reached out." The words landed like a blunt force hit. I didn't flinch, didn't blink, but inside I was unraveling. She kept talking. Something about old feelings resurfacing. About how being with him was like standing in a storm, unpredictable, consuming. And me? I was the calm after the storm. The safe harbor. Too safe. Too calm. Too boring. I stared at her across the candlelight, my chest tight with a mix of rage and heartbreak. She was dismantling our future with the ease of someone folding laundry. Finally, I said the only thing that mattered. "So that's it?" Her eyes shimmered with guilt, or maybe excitement. "I don't know what I want. I just know Carter makes me feel alive in a way you don't." That sentence carved itself into me like glass. Alive in a way you don't. The food arrived, steaming and fragrant, but neither of us touched it. I slid the flowers across the table toward her. She didn't even look at them. And in that moment, I understood, the woman I loved was already gone. There are moments when silence is louder than any explosion. When Elena finished her confession at the restaurant, the room seemed to shrink. The clinking of glasses, the low hum of conversation, even the violin playing near the bar, all of it blurred into background noise. It was just her words replaying in my head. "He makes me feel alive in a way you don't." I sat there, staring at the untouched plate between us. Steam curled upward and vanished, just like the future I thought we had. She twisted her napkin again, eyes darting around the room like she hoped someone might save her. When she finally looked at me, there was expectation in her face. Like she thought I'd fight, beg, offer to change. Instead, I surprised both of us. Okay, I said quietly. Her brow furrowed. Okay? You've made your choice. Color drained from her face. She wasn't prepared for surrender. She'd been gearing up for a battle, tears, maybe raised voices, dramatic lines that would echo through the night. But all she got was calm. Wait, Cole, I didn't say, you said enough. I pushed my chair back. If Carter's what you want, go. But don't expect me to be waiting here when it blows up. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I dropped cash on the table, stood, and walked away. The flowers I'd brought still sat between us, wilted under the weight of her silence. The drive home was surreal. Streetlights streaked across my windshield, neon bleeding into the night. My hands gripped the steering wheel, but I barely felt them. 3 years together, 12 months sharing a home, half a year engaged, and it was all over in 10 minutes. When I pulled into the driveway, the house loomed like a stranger. This place was supposed to be our start. Now it was the setting for our collapse. Elena was already inside when I walked through the door. Her suitcase sat half-packed near the couch. She was crying, mascara smudged, voice trembling. I didn't mean it like that, she pleaded. I was confused. Scared. I didn't answer. I went to the table, opened my laptop, and started unlinking our accounts, banking, utilities, streaming services. Each click felt like cutting a cord. You're ending 3 years over one mistake? She asked, voice breaking. That was the first time I laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. Elena, you ended it. I'm just cleaning up the mess. She flinched. I almost pitied her. Almost. By midnight, she was gone. Suitcases in hand, engagement ring left on the table like a discarded prop. When the door closed behind her, the silence was so sharp it rang in my ears. The twist came the next morning. Calls. Dozens of them. My mother furious. My sister blunt as ever. Friends demanding answers. Her parents begging me to reconsider. Word traveled faster than I thought possible. She's just scared, her mother said over the phone, voice heavy with guilt. Don't give up on her. Scared people don't run back to their exes, I replied, and hung up. But the true twist wasn't the chaos. It was me. I expected to feel broken, collapsed under the weight of it all. Instead, I felt clarity. Yes, I was hurt. Yes, I was angry. But underneath it, there was something else, freedom. No more waiting for her to come home. No more wondering who was on the other end of her late-night texts. No more apologizing for not being enough. She had called me safe. She had compared me to a kiddie pool, while Carter was the stormy sea. Fine. Let her drown chasing waves. I wasn't going to fight for someone who had already chosen someone else. And that realization, that sharp, almost defiant clarity, was the real turning point. For the first time in weeks, I slept. Deep, unbroken, dreamless sleep. And when I woke up, the ring still glinting on the table beside me, I knew the story wasn't about what I lost. It was about what I was about to reclaim. The morning after Elena left, I thought the hardest part was over. I was wrong. Ending things in a quiet Italian restaurant was one blow. Watching her walk out of my house with her life stuffed into 2 suitcases was another. But what came after? That was the real punishment. The world doesn't pause when your life implodes. The bills don't stop. The caterer doesn't care. The venue doesn't refund. The photographer doesn't wait for your heartbreak to settle before asking for the cancellation fee. I spent hours on the phone, canceling piece after piece of the wedding we'd been planning. Each call felt like tearing out stitches. I'm sorry, Mr. Daniels, the venue manager said flatly. It's non-refundable at this point. Non-refundable. $8,000 down the drain between deposits, flowers, and food I'd never taste. I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the engagement ring still sitting on the table. A shiny circle of metal worth thousands, reduced to nothing more than a cruel reminder. My parents called every day. My mom's voice always urgent, sharp with disbelief. "Tell me this isn't about another man, Cole." "It's Carter," I said once. Just saying the name out loud made her go silent. "That loser? She left you for him?" "Apparently." "Then good riddance," she snapped. "She wasn't worthy of you." I wanted to believe her. But when the house was quiet, when I lay awake at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling, I didn't feel worthy of anyone. Friends wanted details. They messaged me like it was gossip, something to pick apart over drinks. Some were sympathetic. Others played armchair therapists. "Maybe therapy could save it," one suggested. "She just needed time to figure things out," another said. Time? She hadn't asked for time. She'd asked for Carter. I typed the same reply to all of them: "Ask Elena about Carter." That ended most conversations. But the silence at home was louder than any messages. No. "How was your day?" when I walked in. No music while she cooked. No arguments about Netflix. Just me, a half-empty house, and the kind of quiet that creeps under your skin. Sometimes I'd catch myself starting to speak. "What do you want for dinner? Want to watch something?" before remembering there was no one there to answer. The loneliness was its own kind of grief. So I buried myself in work. Picked up every shift. Covered for coworkers. The ambulance sirens became a metronome to my days, drowning out the silence waiting for me at home. My boss probably thought I was chasing overtime for extra cash. The truth? I just couldn't stand sitting alone with my thoughts. Still, the world had a way of pushing Elena back into my life, even when she was gone. 2 weeks after the breakup, a friend texted me screenshots of her Facebook posts. Quotes about following your heart and not settling. I stared at my phone, numb. Not settling? That was what she was calling it now. She hadn't followed her heart. She had chased nostalgia. She hadn't avoided settling. She had settled for someone who once walked away. The anger flared hot, but only for a moment. Then it cooled into something heavier: exhaustion. I didn't reply. I didn't post. I didn't defend myself online. Let her curate whatever story she needed. I knew the truth. My family knew the truth. Anyone who mattered knew the truth. Still, the pressure built. Money gone. Friends gossiping. Family demanding explanations. Work consuming me. And the worst part, the quiet hum of doubt that never left. Was I really just the safe choice? The boring one? The backup plan? At night, when the house was dark and still, that question gnawed at me. But even as the doubt festered, I began to notice cracks in her narrative. Teachers she worked with messaged me quietly: "She screwed up. We saw it coming." And then came the rumor, the one that changed everything. Carter had dumped her. 6 weeks. That's all it took for the stormy sea she abandoned me for to toss her aside. When I heard it, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was proof. Proof that I hadn't been the problem. Proof that her fantasy wasn't built to last. Still, even with that bitter satisfaction, the pressure didn't let up. Because deep down, I knew what always happens in stories like this. She wasn't done with me. And it was only a matter of time before she came back. My 30th birthday wasn't supposed to matter. Just another day, another candle, another reminder that time keeps moving. But my family had other plans. By late afternoon, my backyard was alive, grills smoking, music playing, my dad holding court with his secret sauce, like he was auditioning for a cooking show. My sister, Selena, was already making jokes at my expense, and my mom fussed over the decorations like we were hosting a wedding instead of a barbecue. And then there was Vanessa. She showed up carrying a cake she'd baked herself, rich chocolate with clean, careful frosting. No shortcuts, no store-bought box. Just time and effort. The kind of gesture Elena never would have bothered with. When she handed it to me, I caught the flicker of pride in her eyes, the quiet kind of joy that doesn't scream for attention. For the first time in months, I felt something warm settle in my chest. It felt like life was steady again. Then came the knock. I assumed it was a neighbor, maybe someone annoyed about the cars parked up the street. I opened the door without thinking. And there she was. Elena. Her hair was uneven, like she'd hacked at it herself in a bathroom mirror. Her eyes were hollow-rimmed red. She looked fragile in a way I'd never seen, holding a wrapped gift in her hands like it was a peace offering. "Happy birthday, Cole," she said, voice sweet but trembling. Behind me, the chatter from the backyard quieted. Even if they couldn't see her, they could feel the tension. I kept my tone even. "What are you doing here, Elena? I just wanted to give you this. Maybe talk. Just a few minutes." The sight of her on my doorstep felt like déjà vu from some cruel universe. Months earlier, she had left with luggage in hand. Now she was back, gift in hand, as if the last 6 weeks hadn't shattered everything. "What do you want to talk about?" I asked, though I already knew. "Us," she said quickly. "How I messed up. How much I miss being with you." A laugh broke out of me before I could stop it. Not bitter, not cruel. Just startled by the absurdity. "You miss this? The relationship you called safe and dull? The kiddie pool compared to Carter's storm?" Her face burned crimson. I was emotional. "I didn't mean it." "Of course you meant it. Nobody says something that specific by accident." Her jaw clenched, but before she could answer, the door creaked open behind me. Vanessa stepped out, calm and steady, carrying nothing but a polite smile. "Everything okay out here?" she asked, her voice warm but firm. The look on Elena's face was pure theater, shock, then rage, then disbelief, all colliding at once. Her fantasy had never included another woman standing beside me. "Who is this?" she demanded, her voice pitching high. "Vanessa," she said, unbothered. "You must be Elena." The grace in her tone cut sharper than any insult. "You're already seeing someone?" Elena's voice cracked. "Actually," I said, my tone deliberate, "it's been almost 3 months since you chose Carter. So yeah, I'm with someone who actually wants to be here." That broke her. "You never fought for me," she screamed, the words spilling out, raw and desperate. "You just let me go like I didn't matter. You moved on too fast, like none of it meant anything." The irony hit me so hard I almost staggered. She had thrown me aside for nostalgia and chaos. And now I was the villain for not waiting in the ruins she left behind. Behind me, I heard chairs scraping, footsteps on the deck. My father's voice cut through the chaos, steady as ever. "She needs to go, Cole." Elena's eyes flicked toward him, then back to me, wild and pleading. "Wouldn't it be easier if we just got back together?" "Easier for who?" I asked, my voice low, measured. "Because it feels pretty easy on my end right now." The words landed like a gavel. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks, a raccoon mask of regret. She clutched the gift tighter, as if it could undo months of betrayal. Then, with a strangled cry, she turned and stormed down the driveway, slamming her car door so hard the glass rattled. Tires screeched as she tore away, leaving only the echo of her meltdown behind. I closed the door slowly, the noise of the party filtering back in. Vanessa slipped her hand into mine, no questions, no judgment, just quiet strength. The gift Elena left sat on the porch. We didn't open it. We didn't need to. Because the real present was peace, the kind that only comes when you finally refuse to be someone's second choice. A week after the birthday fiasco, I found Elena's gift still sitting on the porch, rain-stained and sagging at the corners. Nobody had touched it. On Sunday morning, I picked it up, walked to the trash bin, and dropped it in. I didn't even open it. Whatever was inside couldn't compete with what I already had, a family that stood behind me, a partner who treated love like a verb instead of a performance, and a life that finally felt like mine again. The weeks that followed felt strangely light. For months I had carried a weight I couldn't name, the constant suspicion, the forced smiles, the fear of being blindsided. But once the storm broke, there was nothing left to carry. I still thought of Elena sometimes. How could I not? 3 years doesn't vanish overnight. But the memories didn't sting anymore. They felt like old photographs in a box I'd outgrown. You glance, you remember, but you don't climb back inside. And every time doubt crept in, every time that little voice whispered maybe you were too safe, too boring, something small would silence it. Vanessa dropping by the station with coffee after a brutal shift. My sister texting me, she did you a favor. My father's gruff voice reminding me, the right woman won't make you feel like you have to audition for her love. There were reminders that safe isn't the opposite of passion. It's the foundation real love stands on. 6 months after Elena's meltdown, Vanessa and I moved in together. It wasn't a grand gesture, no choreographed speeches or Instagram-worthy announcements. She was already spending most nights at my place, and one morning, over coffee, she said, "Should we just make this official?" I smiled. Yeah, we should. It felt steady. Honest. The kind of decision that doesn't need fireworks to matter. And that was the difference. With Elena, love had always felt like a performance. Grand gestures, high stakes, the constant fear of losing her to the next distraction. With Vanessa, it was real. It was coming home tired from a 12-hour shift and knowing she'd still laugh at my dumb jokes. It was trust, simple and unshakable. 1 year after the breakup, I proposed. Not on a rooftop with city lights blazing. Not with a crowd of strangers clapping. Just us, during a quiet weekend away, the sound of the ocean in the background. She said yes, and in her voice, there was no hesitation. For the first time in a long time, I believed in forever again. Not long after, I heard through mutual friends that Elena had moved back in with her parents. Carter had been a ghost for months, and her life was unraveling in the wake of choices she couldn't undo. Rumors said she was still asking about me, still watching from the sidelines, still wondering if the door was cracked open. But that door wasn't just closed. It was locked, sealed, bricked over. Because here's what betrayal taught me. When someone makes you their backup plan, they're showing you exactly where you rank in their world. And if you ever step back into that role, you're the one choosing it. I chose differently. I chose peace. On the night before my wedding to Vanessa, I sat alone for a while, staring at the ring I was about to place on her finger. It wasn't just gold and stone, it was a promise, heavy with meaning, but light in my hands because this time it was rooted in truth. I thought about Elena one last time. Not with anger. Not even with sadness. Just clarity. She had been the lesson. Vanessa was the answer. The next day, when I stood across from Vanessa and said the words, "For better or worse," I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel doubt. I felt steady. Whole. Ready. And when I slipped the ring onto her hand, I knew this wasn't a placeholder. This wasn't the kiddie pool. This was the ocean. And I wasn't afraid of drowning.